Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Ben. Welcome back to Innotribe. Welcome to day 3. We're only halfway through, and we've got another 2 full days ahead of us. So, really glad you can be with us here this morning. Over the past couple of days, we've had some amazing content, some amazing speakers, and today promises to be another amazingly full-packed day. But before we jump into today, I'd like to invite up on stage our Global Head of HR, Louise Costa, to talk about what we learned yesterday. Louise, over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Yeah, so yesterday was super exciting. It was all about organization. It was all about navigating the changing and complex landscape that we are all in today. We started up with our Startup Challenge for Africa, which was extremely passionate in terms of the startups that are coming out of this continent. Is truly fascinating. But then we were organizing for complexity. So here what we were talking about is the difference between something that is complicated, something that is complex. And today's nature of the landscape that we're operating in, the environment that we're in, is complex. And complex means surprising and difficult to manage. So one of the things we learned is that management is a dead horse, and that we definitely need to change the way we operate as organizations to optimize and get the most out of as a performance culture. So I very much encourage you to look at some of the boards we have outside, some of the words that we had out there. We did FinTech Hubs. We looked at FinTech Hubs coming out of EMEA. Very interesting sessions. You can find them out at the Swiss Lounge if you want to have more information. And then we did situational awareness maps. And here really what we learned is how to be Jason Bourne, how to see the chess game that no one else is seeing, and how to understand that if you know the environment that you're operating in, you can actually plan strategies that work rather than base yourselves on storytelling and hindsight. So that was a really interesting day. I hope today will be as equally fascinating and that you will take away learnings that will bring you forward. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Louise. Okay, so over to today. So one of my jobs in the Innotribe team is to run our innovation programs. And one of those is the Startup Challenge. This year we did 2 startup challenges in what we call emerging innovation ecosystems. So those places that are ripe on the ground to be able to take advantage of things like digital, mobile, and really look at what's going on. We were pleased to go into Latin America as part of our SWIFT Latin America Regional Conference back in June. Juan Martinez hosted us, so let's sit down, it's okay, I'll come to you. So I'm actually going to throw straight over to you because you've got the 3 winners here from our Latin America conference. And I understand you're going to have a conversation with these guys about what's happening on the ground. So Juan, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin. Yes, we do have the first startup challenge at Mexico in Innotribe, and it was a wonderful experience. We have here the 3 winners, which is an example of the passion and the creativity that we have in Latin America. Innovation is key. It's always key, and it's important to keep it there, especially when at moment of changes. And we have moment of changes in Latin America and Caribbean. Those moments of changes are important, and the region is coping with that in an excellent way. So today we have here 3 examples that are going to help us to understand how they are facing those changes, how they are facing those changes with innovation. And what I would like to do now is to go and start the conversation with them, which is, I'm sure, what you are waiting for. So let's start, guys. So we prepared some questions for you, so I'm sure that you are going to give us some nice insights to all the delegates that are today here with us. Good morning, all of you. Good morning, Grant. Good morning, Daniel.
Morning.
Good morning, Nerea.
Morning.
So the first question that I have for you is that how you engage. I'm curious to know how you engage with banks. And maybe Nerea, you can start.
Well, in our case, we signed direct collaboration agreements with banks. We're currently working with 10 financial institutions in Chile, and we're about to launch in Mexico and already have agreements with the two largest banks in the country. So by nature, I mean, we are collaborative with banks.
What's the name of the startup?
Sorry?
What's the name?
Yeah, I'm the country manager for Mexico for the Stacame, and we generate an alternative credit scoring based on how people pay their utility and telecom bills, and that enables banks to provide loans at lower risk to population that currently have no credit history, and therefore they can grow their customer base.
Daniel, tell us a little bit about your startup and how you engage with banks.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Vogel. I am president and co-founder of Bitso. We're a digital currency exchange that allows individuals and businesses in Mexico gain access to financial services that are faster, that are more cost-effective and more transparent through the use of proprietary technology that connects the local financial infrastructure in the country with the world of blockchain technology. Since winning the Innotribe competition and pitching at mainly large financial institutions, we actually have been working with a few of them. And I think for them, they are really interested in understanding what this technology is and how they can roll it into their operations. And we have a few pilots with a few Mexican banks. And it's just been a process of teaching them what the technology is and getting them to understand the benefits and just doing small tests where they can really see this out themselves.
Okay, thank you. Grant?
Yeah, Grant Taylor, co-founder and CEO of Quotanda, and we provide student lending as a service to lenders and universities. Lenders could be banks, foundations, even potentially governments. So, yeah, basically we do outsource student loan solutions. It's like a white label for banks. My co-founder, Bill Hubert, has done this in the US with his previous business. They did $4.5 billion worth of student loan originations for 250 different banks. And we're offering that same service on a global basis. So in Mexico, we're about to launch what is essentially the 6th student lender. It's the largest Spanish-speaking market in the world, and excited to be, bringing that capability and customer acquisition strategy to banks.
And you don't have the Spanish accent in your English, but your Spanish is perfect because I check it there.
Gracias.
So the second question that I have for you is that the funding in the region, in Latin America and Caribbean, is perceived as risky. What are your views on that? Do you think that is true? Is affecting innovation? What are your views? Maybe.
Yeah, so the largest funds, I mean, US, European, and Asian venture capital funds, there are some that are now investing in Latin America, but the valuations are, they're fairly conservative with those early investments. Valuations are lower. The investments are generally smaller than they are in their core markets. So I think it's more difficult for Latin American companies generally to compete on a global scale, but they are, right? And I think these are 3 good examples of businesses that have real global potential that are innovating in Latin America. And there are lots of others, but there are also a lot of companies that are taking business models that have proven successful elsewhere and expanding those strategies in Latin America.
Yeah, I think in our case with Bitso, our fundraising strategy was to attract both international investors along with Mexican investors. And so I think there's 3 things that are interestingly happening. I operate in Mexico, so specifically in Mexico, which is government's making a big push to basically have funds for high-risk investments like early-stage startups. Number 2 is that the venture capital community in Mexico is growing, and so you have more venture capital funds, and so I think that's obviously increasing investment and innovation in the region. And number 3 is what you were just saying, which is that you're starting to get the ability to compete on a global basis for these funds. And so in our case, we were able to get funding from the US, from Canada, from England, as well as from Mexico. And so we just closed down a successful round, which we'll be announcing later today, but it came through international players along as Mexican ones.
Thank you. Next question, and I can see familiar faces for me from my friends and customers here, banks, and they always have a doubt of what are your intentions with the banks. Do you want their money only? Do you want to collaborate with them? Do you want to help them to improve the services that they have for their customers? Nerea, how do you see that? Do you want their money only or not? Or something else?
I think it's a combination, right? Generally, banks do either collaborate with startups, they acquire them, or they copy and paste their models, right? I think in the Stackame's case, we're more into the collaboration. I think our model complements their model, and they've seen that, we've proved that, and we make the risk assessment model stronger and more solid. So for us, it is just natural to collaborate with them. Obviously, I mean, we want their customers to join our platform, and we actually had interest from banks in investing in us, but we're a multi-bank platform, so it's not that we just we said no to their money.
Thank you.
I think for us is we want that two-way thing with the banks. I think obviously from the round that we closed, we got money from a financial institution in Mexico, so that was important. But I think the reason why we wanted was not because we necessarily wanted their money. I think we wanted their expertise. We wanted both for them to learn what we're building and why what we're making is interesting for their business models, but also to learn from them. And I think, you know, banks have a lot of experience in a lot of the things that we're trying to build, which are financial services. And so getting closer to them and understanding some of the challenges that they've been through is extremely helpful for us.
Thank you. Fran, what are your views?
Yeah, so we partner with banks to essentially open up a customer acquisition channel, an additional customer acquisition channel for millennial clients, which have a generally high lifetime value and a low customer acquisition cost. You know, in some cases we can replace existing student loan solutions that have been done, you know, with paper and people-intensive processes. But a lot of times, in Latin America in particular, it's a new product, and it's an opportunity to connect. Yeah, just additional customer acquisition channel, and awesome for us to partner with banks.
And that's good, that's good. Collaboration and money then. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for getting that. I know you a bit, so I know that you are brave and you are not scared about anything. And now that I see my colleague Frank here in the audience, is coming to my mind another question. Regulation. See, he is all the time dealing with regulation and helping us at Swift. And it seems that regulation doesn't apply to you guys. And fintech doesn't care about regulation. And then, obviously, if this is true, then it's not the fair play with the bank. So how do you see that? What can you tell them? Are you playing with regulation? Do you pay attention to that or not? Yeah.
We do have to comply with regulation. From the moment we work with banks make sure that we do comply. Also, I think for a startup, it's very risky not to comply with the law, because that means we would disappear. So it would be very costly for us. I think it's just the perception is maybe not too fair, because we're more flexible, and that means that we can adapt easily, and that's something that not all the banks can do. So maybe that's why we're perceived as not complying with regulation. I don't know.
Yeah, I think some of the reality of fintech business models is that we are doing something differently. And when you do something radically different, then sometimes the existing regulations don't necessarily fit your business models very well. And so you end up in this weird gray area. Now, saying that regulation doesn't apply to us, I think, would be stupid. I think, most fintech businesses are very aware of regulation, and they want to, participate with regulators in understanding what would be the best way to reduce the risks that some of our businesses bring to the market, both in, consumer protection and perhaps in money laundering. What are the potential risks that some of these businesses bring? I think regulators are bound to have two maybe different goals. One is, how do we prevent innovation, inhibiting innovation? How do we make sure that innovation keeps happening? Because in a country like Mexico, where you have a large segment of the population which doesn't have access to financial services, you want these fintech companies to come in and see if they can figure out a way to maybe service a sector of the population that hasn't been served. But at the same time, the other, I think, big mandate that regulators have is, well, but how do we really fight these risks that these guys are bringing with them, with their business models, no? And I think, at least in the case of Mexico, that we see a very positive response from the regulators, and there's currently a fintech law that is hopefully going to get presented later this year. And we're going to see, this is, the technology is moving very fast, and regulation will always be keeping up, trying to keep up with it. And it's a race, and we're very positive about it. That's why we're spending time building this out, but let's see what happens.
Thank you. Rand, what are your views?
Yeah, so we rely on the lending license of the lender that we work with. It's a white label technology, so the contract is between the student and the lender, but we have to comply with privacy policies and the usual. So.
Okay, awesome. So, well, that's good to know. And also, I'm curious to know, your startup is mainly focusing on the local market where you operate, or you see yourself as a global player? How do you see that? Maybe Grant, you can.
Yeah, so we launched in Spain 3 years ago. We're expanding in Mexico and other parts of Latin America, Colombia. So we see a real global opportunity.
I think we are very focused on Mexico right now, but we are also incredibly interested in expanding the rest of Latin America. But too early for us to really have a strategy around that.
In our case, we've been operating in Chile for 1 year. We're about to launch in Mexico, and we plan to launch in Colombia next year and Peru the following year. So we see potential for a global expansion.
And also another question to engage with the audience. We have a lot of bankers here, and some head of GTBs, some CIOs, some people that are managing the business in a daily basis. Because for you, I guess that is normal to discuss with the head of innovations in the bank and all of that. So forget about it, because that's the comfort zone for you. Imagine that you have the CIO of a bank in front of you. What would you say to them? What would be your advice, or what would you say?
I would love to ask them to move faster, because what 1 year for a bank is nothing. 1 year for a startup is a lot of time, so it can make a difference between surviving and disappearing. So I would suggest, I would love to see banks making proof of concepts faster. Sometimes it can take up to 1 year or 2 years to make things happen, and that's really challenging for a startup. So that would be my ask. Move faster, please.
Thank you. Daniel.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you see that most banks have an innovation arm, but then, there's prizes that go to startups all the time for winning an award for one of the bank's innovation competitions. But then turning that into actual partnership with a bank is nearly impossible, just because the time it takes and the incapacity of the bank to move faster. And I think my advice to a CIO would be, figure out a way to make this process a lot leaner. And it doesn't mean that you need to roll up any of these products or all of them, but maybe some of them. And what I see at least in Mexico is not a lot of real integration from the bank's perspective into a lot of these really interesting business models that are emerging. And I think that's a huge missed opportunity for the banks.
Thank you. Grant,
yeah, I completely agree. I've seen a bunch of innovation labs, or some, however they call it, but not a lot of integrations.
Okay, so many thanks for your views. I think that your cases are very relevant, because your innovation is pragmatic. You show how you can collaborate with the banks and how you can add value, how you can help them to engage better with their customers. You are not looking after the money. You care about regulation, which is good, and I think that is important for them to know too. And I can feel your passion during the discussions that we had back in Mexico when we did the startups. challenge. It was wonderful the way you present and the way you pitch your value proposition. It is good to know that you are not only focusing on Mexico, that you can add value in other countries. And yes, I think that if you keep you keep going with your creativity and your innovation, I think that banks are gonna get the message. They wanna move faster. Sometimes they cannot, but I'm sure that with your help, they will improve a lot. So thanks a lot for your insights, and thanks a lot for sharing with us your views. And with that, I will hand over to Kevin. Before, I would like to ask for a big applause to these three excellent startups.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, guys. Just to add to that, if you want to learn more from these guys about what's going on in the ground, or if you just want to learn more about what they're doing, they're here all week as exhibitors. Their stand is over by the escalators to the plenary on B80. Please go over there, take some time, go and see them, and have a chat with them. Today is a packed day. We're fortunate enough to be having a guide through our day. So I'd like to ask very quickly to come up on stage and quickly walk through what's going to happen for the rest of today. Anju, would you care to join us up on stage and talk us about what's going to happen?
Thank you. Thanks. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anju Patwadan, and I am going to walk you through our amazing agenda for this day. By way of introduction, I am currently at Stanford University. I am a Fulbright visiting scholar, and my work is focused on the use of technology to support financial inclusion. I also work as a partner with a fintech fund from China. We have a direct fund and a fund of funds for about $1 billion. I do some work with the World Economic Forum and with the government of Estonia. That's what I do now, but until July, I was in banking. I was the Global Chief Innovation Officer for Standard Chartered Bank, and I used to do a lot of these things that you guys talked about. And when I was there, we did some projects using artificial intelligence, robo-advisory, robotics process automation. And I'm very fascinated by the topic of intelligent machines and the implications of those on our lives as well as on financial services. And that's what all of today is going to be about. It's an amazing, amazing day with some great speakers. And we are going to start the day with a session by Gerd Leonhard. He's a futurist. He's the person who said that our lives are going to change more in the next 20 years than they did in the last 300 years. Sounds exhilarating, but also sounds scary. I heard Gerd last year in another event in San Francisco, and he's really great, so you're in for a treat. After that, there is going to be a panel discussion on digital ethics. I recently moved from Singapore. I used to be with the bank in Singapore, and I've just moved to Palo Alto. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area now. And I always had a few gadgets at home, and I have a lot more now. So I have the Amazon Echo. I have the Nest camera. I have a robotic vacuum cleaner. We have this Google car, which goes past our house some 4 times a day. We have a Tesla, which parks itself. I absolutely love it. But what also scares me a lot is the amount of information that all these devices are continuously gathering about us, what it means for us from a privacy and a security point of view, and what we should be aware of. So that's what this panel today is going to explore, about how this data should be used or is being used, who should police it, who should govern it, who should monitor it, and I'm looking forward to that session. We're also very lucky to have 3 book authors amongst ourselves today. We have John Havens, Gerd Leonhard, and Amber Case. After the morning sessions, there is going to be a book signing right outside this room. So if you're interested in their books, the autographed versions of their books, that's where you need to go. During lunch, we are going to be talking about the FinTech hubs. Today is the day for Americas. So we will have representatives from the FinTech hubs in New York, San Francisco, Mexico, and Canada. My friend Peter also took some creative liberties with the world map and included Germany in Americas today. Jokes apart, Germany is very much part of the FinTech hubs today simply because all the other days were really packed. So it's going to be covered today during lunch. After that, we have sessions on artificial intelligence for financial services. Many of you have heard about robo-advisory, about chatbots. We all read about self-driving cars and drones. But what it means for us in the world of banking and financial services is what will be covered today. We have 3 amazing speakers from Palantir, from Betterment, and from BNP Paribas. The next session for the day, we have a world-famous expert on cyber security. How many of you watch this show called CSI Cyber? Anybody watches it? No? Only 1? 2? It's OK to raise your hand if you watch it. I watch it. I love it, but I get very scared. I think that's what our, so Brian Schneider, who's our cybersecurity expert for that session today, The Economist called him the cybersecurity guru. He's written a book called Data and Goliath, which has been a bestseller on Amazon. So he's going to be talking about the innovative ways that the hackers adopt and how we need to be innovative in our cyber defenses. And I think if you watch CSI Cyber, you would know it can be very, very innovative. After that, we have one other session, which is Think Clash. It's about Internet of Things, on how some of these existing things like smart cards, chips, et cetera, that we are using today, and then the emerging Internet of Things, which is drones and self-driving cars, what happens when they clash with each other? And how should we be thinking about it? How should we prepare for it? And what does it mean for financial services? So that's going to be in the session called Think Clash. And after that, we are pretty much on to wrap up of our day. And the last session for today is very different, very interesting, not to be missed. So we have a musician today. We have a singer-songwriter. Her name is BT Wolf. She's from UK. She's going to be here today talking about her music. She's been nominated for the Best Digital Music Award for this year. She's done amazing things combining technology and music. She will be here doing a little talk and Q&A. And then after that, we have our Innotribe Networking Day this evening. And BT and her band are going to be performing live there. So it's an action-packed day, lots to look forward to. Hope you have a great time.